Welcome to Our Environment, a video series focused on Two Rivers land, wildlife, and waterways. Brought to you by the City of Two Rivers Environmental Advisory Board. Join us as we sit down and talk with local environmental experts about improving our quality of life through resiliency and sustainability.
I'm Titus Seilheimer. I'm a fisheries specialist with Wisconsin Sea Grant. I have worked here at our Manitowoc field office for almost 12 years now. And my background, I have a background in aquatic ecology. I've worked on all 5 Great Lakes. I've spent a lot of time on looking at the habitat of coastal wetlands, so those marshes that are very important habitats for a lot of fish. For really about 75% of all fish species rely on coastal wetlands at some point in their life cycle. So if you enjoy a yellow perch dinner, you're probably going to thank, or you should be thanking, coastal wetlands for their role in producing a lot of yellow perch. So, but I've been here. I actually do education and outreach and research with Sea Grant, so I get to ride along on commercial fishing boats sometimes and get seasick sometimes. You can ask them about that. But I also get to talk to kids and take them out on the beach, and we learn about the ecology of the lakes, and also get to talk to different groups like this group. So. I think what I do is kind of translate the science. The Great Lakes are really complex, so I want to tell the stories of the ecology of the lake. Forget-Me-Not Creek is a small creek. It flows directly into Lake Michigan. If you're by the hospital, the Aurora Hospital there in Two Rivers, is where Forget-Me-Not Creek enters into Lake Michigan. And so I've been working on that creek really as long as I've been here, kind of following what's happening with it. And there's a portion of it kind of right where Woodland Drive. So when you're going down Woodland Drive, you go over top of Forget-Me-Not Creek, and there's a little section there that has like this, it's straight, and then there's this 90-degree turn, and then it goes towards the woods. In what was it was at one time an ag field. Now Woodland Dunes owns it, so they have been managing it and kind of taking that field and making that more wetland habitat and bird habitat. But what's going to happen with this is they are going to kind of take this straight line and 90-degree turn and make it more of a sinuous creek like it would have been, or kind of should be, I think. It's been a lot of years in process, and really exciting to see it actually happen. And then kind of what my role will be after the work's done is then to kind of follow what happens. So I've mapped the habitat that's there now, kind of currently, what lives there, and then I'll be kind of following along in the years to come to see, what has happened with this creek, and how do the fish respond, how do the other organisms respond. So, really fun to have this kind of local habitat that I can spend time working with, and taking students who work with me in the summer and, teaching them about ecology and stream restoration. And it's a great place to have in our community. There's a air photo from 1938, and that's kind of the earliest look at the creek that I've had. And you can see that even in 1938, which is a long time ago, it had been it was already channelized then. So, people change these systems because they, in a very agricultural watershed, it's a small It's a small creek. It's only maybe 2 miles long, so it's really small. But what people wanted was to move the water off the land. They wanted to get it kind of out of the fields, and that has especially now, like we're seeing more rain, more intensive rainstorms, and so what we really want to do is slow the water down. We want to have, and right now it's very straight, it's very shallow for a lot of the year. And so bringing it to more of a natural habitat and actually having like some pools and some riffles, it's, adding diversity of habitat. It's going to have, these places that will hold water and be kind of deeper than they are now, where like there's this kind of a whole section where it's, right now it's probably a few inches deep, and, there's definitely some fish that can live there, and it's got brook sticklebacks and creek chubs, and I like those. They're native species, and but I think if we have more kind of habitat diversity, that can also support kind of more biodiversity in that system as well. And just kind of nice to see these habitats kind of going back to what they could be or what they would have been, or making them, like improving them. And I think like historically, yes, we kind of made decisions, I think, based on what was best for people at the time, and not always thinking about kind of the land or the ecology. And now I think we're investing the money to really kind of turn those back, and at least create some new habitat that's I think biologically more interesting and supporting more species. So it'll be fun. And I've put a trail cam out there, and I've got like great blue herons coming through. There's deer going through the creek. There's raccoons. There was this woodchuck that spent all this time there. There'd be turkeys going through. So I like the fish. That's what I care about in the water. But it's not just fish. It's birds. It's mammals. It's lots of animals using these properties, especially in woodland dunes, which I think is just this great contiguous piece of habitat that lots of the coast doesn't have that. So probably too many deer. If you ask them, less deer would be better. But it's so it's going to be more natural, more diverse, and then we get to see what happens with it.
I just recently interviewed Julia Nordyke from Sea Grant about green infrastructure. And one of the things, besides trying to filter the water, was also to slow it down, like what you were talking about. And we are seeing more major dumps of rain. It's so. And that just can wash things away very quickly. There's a nutrient component to this. Like some of the funding for Forget-Me-Not Creek is a nutrient reduction program. So I think, part of, if you can slow the water down, right now it's just moving as fast as it can, and whatever's running off. And, if it's early in the season when a lot of the fields are bare, that's going to be a lot of sediment, a lot of nutrient running off. And so I think what we can do by slowing down the water in the creek as well is to just kind of, incorporate those nutrients into the biology of the creek, rather than just kind of pushing it out into Lake Michigan. So it's another piece of that. Julia works with green infrastructure, and that's, this is it's kind of similar to that, but it's the already green infrastructure. Yeah, it's green. We're just greening it a little more.
When I think I know what the wild rice likes, I am wrong. And then I say, oh, I see what you're telling me, wild rice.
It is very important to us here at Woodland Dunes to consider that we were not the first peoples here. Since we have come here, a lot of plants have disappeared, and wild rice is one of those.
A lot of this habitat has been degraded, it's been lost. So, I think a lot of Sea Grant programs look to, how can we restore coastal habitats? Historically, from Milwaukee north, pretty much all our river mouths would have had wild rice. So we have multiple areas here at the preserve that we have seeded wild rice, and we are now out looking to see how did that rice do. I mean, this stuff looks good. I like this rice. This is my rice that I've seeded. But we like to see what the wild rice is going to tell us, and if the wild rice likes it here, then we'll follow its lead.
We would love to reintroduce a very important plant to the original peoples that were here and bring that back into our ecosystem.
Well, actually, Jim Nickelbein at Woodland Dunes, who recently retired, and but he said, "Hey, can we seed wild rice here?" And I was like, "I don't know, why not? Let's get some seed and find out." And so we kind of started out as a small pilot project there, and now for the last couple years we've had more seed, and we're trying to seed out in the West Twin River a little bit and see how that goes. We seed off their boardwalk, the Cattail Trail, and we've been putting seed into a couple of their ponds there too. And if you go to Woodland Dunes right now, now is August 2024. If you go there now, walk on the Cattail Trail at that first pond right there, just full of wild rice.
Really?
So it's doing really well there. So that has been, here, like wild rice was historically, it would have been in all our kind of river mouths. There's, reports of it being just across the lower Green Bay in front of the Fox River. It was in the Milwaukee Harbor. So, really not a stretch to say that it would have been here. And so, that's kind of it's a species that we've lost. And, but, again, there's an opportunity to, just take the seed, and seeding it is technical as, finding a good place, throwing the seed out into the water, and then coming back and seeing how it's doing. And we've been kind of trying to follow, we want to see what the rice tells us, because it knows where it wants to be. And it's complicated because, there's kind of a depth area, 1 to 3 feet is kind of where it wants to be. But I don't know what the depth's going to be next year. And so there's always these questions about, where should we put it? And so we kind of, it really is a multi-year effort to, we need to seed it. We try different places. We kind of follow it through the years and, see what it does. Where does it succeed? And then kind of take that example to then guide our seeding in the future. I have, like, the last 2 years for the West Twin River seeding, I'm like, okay, I know where it should go. And then last year I was like, okay, I didn't know where it should go. And then when we seeded in November last year, I was like, okay, now I know where to put it. It should be over here. And now there's like one plant out in the river. So I don't know what I'm doing. So, we just kind of keep building the seed base there, and hopefully we have a good year. It's also, it's just an annual grass. So there's no like plants, it's all based on the seed that goes into the water. So, I think there's some seed, we can kind of build the seed up if it doesn't all germinate every year. But really, like, to get it established on its own, you need to have a lot of plants that are, growing and producing seed. And then, once it gets going, it'll do really well. And we haven't gotten to that point yet. I think we'll keep seeing how it goes, and hopefully the partners, we're working with Ducks Unlimited, and they're kind of the ones supplying the seed, or at least buying it. And so we'll keep going, but we also have people, harvesting their own and contributing it that way as well. So, kind of a neat opportunity to get out on the water and, do this restoration work. And it's fairly low cost, like compared to the Forget-Me-Not Creek work, which, we've got to have a excavator out there doing all this stuff. There's all these permits. Like wild rice is fairly straightforward. You just throw it out in the river and hope for the best. So. I'll really be talking about the fisheries of the Great Lakes and kind of where we're at, and really it's about local fish. It's about how how fish are produced from the lake, how they're harvested, how they're managed, and there is a lot of an eye for sustainability with our fisheries. To maintain the populations that we have, and make sure they're being harvested in a good way that's not impacting other fish species. And I also want to talk, as a part of my job is also with aquaculture and with fish farms, and it is that is another way that Wisconsin is producing fish. And I think they're not competitors. Like, I think they are really two ways that we can get local fish that is fresh. And I think we, as unless you're a really avid angler, I think generally, if I went out and asked people in Manitowoc County, they're probably not eating as much fish as they should be, as the recommendations are. And it's a really important food source. It is, it's healthy, and there are great ways to cook it. And I think just with a few simple, where you can find it, what you should be, good kind of healthy ways to cook it. Like, people can really have more fish in their lives. So, I want to, it's kind of, from the ecology of the fish to the fish being caught to the, the fish being cooked. Like, it's a kind of a really neat, all these interrelated things. And I like telling the story of, where does your fish come from? And,
Right.
Why we should really, eating fish supports the fisheries. So, yeah.
Well, I know that the zoo over in Manitowoc, they had that, was it a hatchery or was it called a nursery? I think it was for trout, or was that salmon?
I think they've done both. I know, they work with the DNR, the Department of Natural Resources, and they get the hatcheries that the state runs will collect the eggs, and they kind of grow them to a certain point, and then they go to that their pond there that the Northeast Wisconsin Sport Fishing Club runs. Like, they kind of maintain it, and it basically, I think last time they had coho salmon. I know they've had brown trout in there as well, and it just sort of supports the fishery by our state hatcheries have a certain capacity that they can maintain, and for a fish species like Chinook salmon, you get the eggs in the fall, you stock them in the spring. But for something like a coho salmon, it needs more time in the hatchery, so that's where this club can come in. They have this nice facility with a single pond, and they have all these volunteers that go in there and make sure everything's running well, it's clean. They make sure the fish get fed, and then that they kind of grow them out to the size they need to be stocked at, and then the DNR comes back and they put them into the stocking truck, and then move them out and release them. So it's I think it's partnerships like that kind of help support the fishery, and it's the sport fishery, very valuable, very important locally to us, and is a whole part of that. We've got commercial fishing, we've got charter fishing, sport fishing, there's fish farming, and people love fish in Wisconsin. So it takes a lot of people to kind of maintain all those fisheries, and gives me something fun to talk about.
Sure.
I like to think about the ecology. I like to, I'm not as much an angler as I am what are the fish doing, and what's that fish doing over there? The one that people don't fish for, so they don't think about it. But yeah, it's neat to see what's out there and what these fish are doing.
Thank you so much. I know we're going to be talking again, maybe for this series. There's so much to discuss and so much information that I know you would like to share with us. So just have your cell phone handy, because I know I'll be getting back in touch with you. Thank you for joining us. Please make sure that you check back regularly for new content.